Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to let a few more folks in and then we'll jump right over. So today's topic is really just to cover the statements and kind of give you some context and ideas for what to expect. So we're going to go over sort of the value of the statements, and then we'll break it down into the personal history statement. We'll talk about some of the common themes that we see, and then we'll also break down the statement of purpose. And then we'll sort of close out with those overarching points. And then today's slides are a little bit shorter than our typical sessions, so we'll definitely have more room for Q&A at the end. So if anything comes up, you're obviously welcome to throw that into the chat. And then we've got both Janine, Nabiha, as well as Maritzi joining us. And so your questions will also be answered in the chat as well. And so once we get to the end, you're welcome to also Q&A with us. Perfect. So, what is the value of the personal history statement and the statement of purpose? And so ultimately, I think it's really important to convey that this is really an opportunity for you to sort of control the narrative and to introduce yourself, and sort of let us know why you're seeking a men's degree, why it is that you're seeking it now. Our committee really does value a holistic review. And so for us, what that means is taking all aspects of your, not just your application, but of your experiences into consideration. And so a lot of the ways in which you're able to convey some of maybe like the things that you have overcome, some of your individual attributes, some of your things that you've learned, in real time, whether that be like through learning, through practice. All of those things are going to allow you to really build out your statements and help us get an idea of the direction that you want to go. So really, it's your opportunity to paint a picture, to let us know like exactly what it is that you want to do and how you plan on doing that. So specifically, the personal history statement, I know we kind of touched on that yesterday, really allows you to outline sort of your background, right? So, what things are your academic qualities? What have you endured as an individual? What was maybe like the undergraduate experience like, and how has that prepared you for your graduate student experience? And so through the personal history statement, that really allows us to see like the individual experiences and all the things that you have to bring to the table. And I think this is really an area for you to hit hard when it comes to diversity in any aspect. So whether that be like from your own individual experiences or things that you have gained along the way. And then the statement of purpose is sort of our way to better understand specifically what it is that you want to do within the program. So what is your area of concentration? What's your specialization? What is your long-term career goal? As long as we can get all of those things to be outlined and to be clearly conveyed, I think those are some of the ways in which we can allow you to have like a hard-hitting personal history statement and a hard-hitting statement of purpose. Perfect. So we'll dive in a little bit more to the personal history statement. So again, both of your statements are a 1,000 word or less requirement. So as close as you can possibly get to the 1,000 words, it's going to be really, really important that you maximize, each one of your sentences. We want you to be both like clear and concise, but also we want your experience to outline like its relevance, make it make the connection. A lot of times it is helpful for us to gain the insight of like what it is that you have been doing throughout your duration of your time, but we want to be able to make that connection to how it aligns with Berkeley. And so I think one of the things that's really helpful is to not make assumptions. I think a lot of times students may be like, oh, okay, like I think that if I put this information on on the application, they may be able to gather that. And there's only certain things that are going to allow you to like input. Like we will be able to obviously see things like your GPA or where specifically you went to school or what that individual like work experience is. But we're not going to be able to necessarily connect all the dots. And so that's why it's important for you to come from the lens of how do I make all of this clear and available to the selections committee so that they can understand who you are as the individual. One of the questions that we get a lot is like, how do I make myself stand out? And I think one of those things is just being as authentic as possible and telling your story as true as it is for you. So make sure that it hits hard in those ways. We can definitely tell when folks are sort of reaching for things or when it's not your own experience. You don't have to fluff it. I think it really goes a long way with the selections committee when we can really see what it is that you're outlining. One of the ways in which you can do that is to make sure that you understand the prompt correctly. So go through and make sure that you're actually reading and answering the questions that are being asked to you. Those questions have been outlined for a reason, so the admissions committee needs to know that you're also able to read, understand the prompt, and then be able to answer those questions effectively. With when it comes to the statement of purpose, that's more of like the why and the background in that sense. But for the personal history statement, definitely connect it to your academic background, to maybe your family background. All of these individual experiences have led you to have those things up to this point. So when you're talking about your personal history, it really is important to sort of outline all of those things and to be able to convey them in that way. Um, I know that we had reached out and we had asked our admissions committee about maybe 3 to 5 different components that they look for within a personal statement. And these are some of the things that they said. We've got facing and overcoming adversities and obstacles. We also have life lessons and how those are going to be used within your engineering career. I've also seen folks use their statement to convey maybe maturity and focus. So maybe how you've developed over the years, how you've grown from maybe like your first year into school all the way up to this point of applying to a graduate school program. Motivations, like what those individual things may be. Maybe there was this one particular thing that really set that fire under you and was like, okay, like now I'm going for it. What is that for you? Um, and then one of the other things that we heard was an explanation of any gaps or inconsistencies in the background. So we kind of touched on that yesterday. If you maybe had like a difficult first or second year, maybe you had a really personal circumstance that came up within the process of your undergraduate experience, then it's important for us to be able to make those connections. So sort of outline what that looks like, outline how that experience has allowed you to grow, what you've taken from that. And I feel like those statements are the ones that really are most impactful is because it's really coming from that true personal experience. And so again, like in this section, we talked about, I went on with the short ones, but in that sense, overcoming any educational barriers or access to higher education. I know sometimes folks are like, hey, maybe that is not necessarily like my specific background. Maybe that wasn't my individual experience. Well, okay, then how has your experience taught you how to sort of view, the experience from the opposite end? How have you contributed to maybe those factors in community? Your academic service as well to advance other like historically marginalized or historically underrepresented communities. If you've served as a tutor, as a mentor, all of those things are very specific to like your individual growth, your community service. And so all of those things are really relevant to your application and can help us gain an understanding of you as a whole person. Um, if you've worked on any research, if any of your materials in the background have allowed you to serve other populations, then okay, let us know what that looks like and what that is and which communities you did serve. And then I think that really also speaks to any kind of leadership skills. So anything that you've been involved in, outline that. And then allow yourself to reflect on some of those key experiences and sort of outline again, like what it is that has led you up to this point. And I think a lot of that really also shows maturity, growth, and advancement, especially if you're somebody who has sort of taken a situation and turned that thing around. I think that also helps us gain a better picture of your development. One of the things that I have seen in applications is sometimes students will be like, um, I've seen this in a few statements where the individual doesn't necessarily take responsibility. They're like, oh, I had a really challenging professor, but they didn't actually like talk about maybe some of the ways in which they learned how to overcome the challenges in the class as opposed to like sort of putting the onus on the instructor. So I think it's also really important to speak to your maturity levels about the things that you have done to grow and advance. If you had a rough year and maybe that was, your own individual experiences, okay, cool, own that, and then be able to outline that for us so we can see the growth. And then with your statement of purpose, again, this one is more of your why. So any of your connections to your concentration, your sub-concentration, specifically UC Berkeley, this is going to be your opportunity to outline those connections and to really hit home with what it is that you want to do. I think one of the most Important things you can do to maximize your statement, especially when it comes to the 1,000 word maximum, is to ensure that you're not regurgitating any of the information that we can already account for in the application. I feel like that is you lose an opportunity to sort of like hit home with your experiences when you regurgitate things that we already know about UC Berkeley. I think an example that I can give of that is UC Berkeley being ranked number 3 engineering program across the nation. So a lot of folks will be like, oh, I really value UC Berkeley because it's number 3, and for its academic rigor and its, reputation. That's great. We know that. We know that about our institution. We know that about our program. So what does that have to do with your individual experience and wanting to get here? So I would definitely say like maximize those things and make them as specific and as personal as possible. And then ensure that yeah, each of your statements really connects home to that particular mission, purpose, alignment. And then how does each sentence contribute to your candidacy at UC Berkeley Engineering Program? This right here, I feel like is very important, especially as it comes down to your area of concentration. It's going to be really important that you make those distinctions, especially if you're submitting to maybe a large cohort like the electrical engineering and computer science. Okay, go a little bit further and tell us about what specifically you want to do within that concentration and why UC Berkeley would be the best fit for you within that area. I think those are some of the ways in which you can maximize your statement to the fullest. And so again, really paying attention to the prompt, making sure you understand what is being asked of you. The 1,000 word maximum applies to both statements. So again, just as close as possible as you can get it. And then your prompt really should be outlining your ultimate like career goals and what you plan on doing with your degree. Um, if this is the first time that you're entering into an engineering program, totally okay. We want to know what about it has drawn you here. That's one of the unique things about our program is that you don't necessarily have to have an engineering background to be able to be eligible for the program. But if something new has brought you here to this point, like help us understand why. And then please let us know like how exactly you hope or expect to contribute to improving the field of engineering as you take this on. And I think a lot of ways in which that can come through really outlines that you've taken time to really understand what it is that you want to do before you actually submit. And so again, we go over sort of analyzing the prompt. So just what in your background essentially has allowed you to thrive, to move forward, to put you in a position to be ready to pursue your graduate studies. So we want to make sure that we're actually answering those questions. What your long-term goals are for your career and how they pertain to this particular profession. Um, and then what do you need a master's degree in engineering for? Why now? I think that really also goes a long way. Anybody can submit an application, but if we don't have a clear insight as to what your purpose is or why you want to do the work that you want to do, it makes it very difficult for us to understand how that might be clear for us that you want to be here at Berkeley. So just ensure that you're answering all the questions to the best of your ability. Again, specifically like to the degree of choice and your concentration of focus. And then how are you going to take advantage of this 1 year program? Um, that's the other thing too. We get folks that actually like take time to draft all these statements and then they submit to the program and then they're like, wait, this isn't the 2 year program. So I think it's really, really important to be, to have a good understanding of like why this 1 year fast track technical program is going to be the best fit for you long term, as opposed to maybe a Master of Science that's a little bit more research based. Um, and so yeah, and then why UC Berkeley is sort of if that one isn't there, then I feel like there's no connection to be made. So make sure that you, as you're outlining those things, that you also put a pretty ribbon on it and you bring it all the way home and you close it out nice and strong. And this is why we recommend having multiple sets of eyes on your materials because sometimes we may think we're answering the statements or we may be thinking that we're answering the prompts, but it may not come through as clearly. And so it may be helpful again to have like your recommenders colleagues, peers review those things for you as well. So some of the overarching points is again that each statement should be a 1,000 word maximum or below. And it is to your advantage to keep the statement as clear and concise as possible. Make sure it's relevant to the program. Make sure it's relevant to the concentrations that you're opting for. Um, And then again, let's try not to make any assumptions that the committee can gather all the things that they need to gather. If something is missing in there, if there is a gap in there that you feel like is going to help us really bridge the communication, put that in there. Let us know. And then once you draft that thing out, you'll have multiple opportunities to go through, especially with many sets of eyes, and edit those things so that you can feel like it's the most impactful and most clear and concise statement that you can submit. Um, so again, check and revise for formatting and spelling. It does matter. Lean into your resources. So, if you have access to things like Word document, if you have access to things like Adobe, things that are going to allow you to sort of see maybe some of those grammatical errors or punctuation errors, definitely have that. And then I would also recommend just, again, multiple sets of eyes. Some folks may be better with grammar, some folks are better with structure. Some folks might be better at actually asking you questions to get the information out so that it can actually convey on paper. So I would definitely recommend doing all of the above outlined to you. And then if you have any questions along the way or you need clarification, you're always, always, always welcome to send us an email at the Fung inbox or schedule a session with one of us and we will connect with you. And again, so any of your experiences that are in the background, any circumstances that have impacted you or led you to this point, would be best suited for your personal history statement. And then anything that's more directly related to like your hands-on experience and your career goals is going to be more tailored for your statement of purpose. So I hope that sort of helps give some insight, give some context, and then again, like we're going to open up the floor for questions and to do a Q&A back and forth. And so if anything comes up, we can answer that here. Awesome. So that concludes the slides, and then what we can do is open it up, and then I will allow folks, if you haven't had your question already answered in the chat, I will go in the order that folks have um, raised their hand. Mohammed, I see you first. Mohammed, are you able to chat? I don't think I can hear you. I may have you type it into the chat just because I'm having trouble hearing you. While Muhammad is typing that, I did get a question in the chat that says, is it acceptable to exceed the 1,000 word limit by a bit, like 50 or 100 words more? We definitely recommend 1,000 words or less. The 1,000 word is a required or a recommended maximum. So as close to 1,000 or less as possible is my recommendation.
Yeah, and I would say, these reviewers are going to be reviewing hundreds of applications, thousands if it's IOR or ME or EECS. So you don't want to like overburden them and you want to be super concise. So you want to make sure that your words pack a punch and instead of use one word instead of using three. This isn't kind of back in school, you have to meet, I don't know, 5 pages or whatever. No, you have to think of 1,000 as max, max, max. If you can get it underneath, below that, that's ideal.
And just to maybe like spin off of that too, like how Janine said, like maybe one word instead of three words to describe something so that you're packing a punch. It's also like making sure that those filler words are removed. I definitely see things like very, really I think all of those little filler words, you'd be surprised, like you don't necessarily need to say like I really really want to be here or like I really value this program. It's like little words like that can actually have like take up a lot of space, and so as Janine said, you might be able to swap for maybe a more impactful word so that you're not having to write out like 3 or 4 different words to convey how badly you want this or how strongly you feel about something. Thank you, Janine, that was a great recommendation. All right, and then Mohammed, it's good to see you too. Let's see. Question is regarding experience in the industry. Since I have about 3 years of work experience where a lot of growth has happened, can I put in technical details since I'm applying to electrical engineering and computer science? Yeah, absolutely. Because you're submitting to this is a technical based program, right? So we're all about growing your leadership skills and growing those technical skills, advancing them. We anticipate that you're not going to have all of them, but if you have had multiple years of experience, like within the field, that is going to be something that would absolutely help build your application. So I would say outline that in different places. You're going to have the opportunity to sort of outline those things maybe in your CV or your resume. But if you're like outlining maybe some specific projects or things that you worked on, and things that can really make the connection to the program, I think that would be very impactful for your application. Thank you, Mohammed. Do I have any other questions? You're welcome to raise your hand. We also have some current students on the call, so if you have any, any questions about maybe like the process, and you want to hear from them, we could definitely pull someone on the screen. So just let me know. Awesome. It's good to see some familiar names and faces again. I've got Mohammed, I see MD, Chanasa. I see quite a few of y'all. I think I had some of y'all on online yesterday too. I see your names. Awesome. If we have questions about courses offered in a specific concentration, what's the best person or department to email? I think in that sense, I would say the graduate student advisor for that particular concentration. Some of us aren't necessarily able to speak to the courses in specific detail.
Mhm. And I'm dropping in the link where you can look at each department. So BioE, CE, EEX, IOR, et cetera. So you can link, click on whatever department you're interested in, and then that'll take you into additional information, including some sample course listings, and then the specific web page for the MEng within that department. So you can click around on there.
Thank you, Janine. And then I have another question that says, when you say to not assume that the reviewers will make any connections, what do you mean? Brenda, that's a great question. I think one example that I can give is like, let's say that you have a work experience on your resume and that job title or that particular role maybe allowed you to have like some technical experiences. And so you draft that on your CV and maybe you enter it as a work experience on like on the application, and then you're like I'm gathering that like if I entered this here and I put this here, I assume that they know that I took on these technical skills. Not everybody's going to read that and review that as like, oh, I gained this particular skill set or I gained this particular experience in this role, as opposed to seeing it and reviewing it as like a title. So I think something like that may be a good opportunity to maybe like reflect on or incorporate in a statement so that they would know exactly what it is that you worked on, or outlining that in a detailed way within your CV so that it's legible to them and that they can make those connections there. So that's what I mean when I say like don't make assumptions that they necessarily know exactly what it is that you are in doing or what all that role maybe entailed within your gap year. So I think it's really important to sort of outline maybe like if there's a particular thing that you're trying to hit home with, really building on that experience and giving them some context as to what that looks like. Does that make sense? I hope that's helpful for you, Brenda. All right, and then let me jump down to this next one. I see Janine answered. Is that Rojan? Let's see. Is it advantage? Is it? I cannot say that word out loud. In any way to submit the application as early as possible. I would, so I always recommend whenever folks are drafting their applications and submitting their materials, I always recommend sooner than later. Um, I don't recommend sooner in that like firing off an application that's not ready. I just mean submitting it as soon as possible, as soon as you feel like it's drafted and ready to go before the deadline. I always recommend that. We don't review applications until after the deadline has closed. But the reason that I always recommend for early submission is just because sometimes things take a little while to be received or to be processed within a system. And I never want to see anybody ruled out by like a technicality because this one thing didn't arrive, but this other thing did. So really, we make those recommendations so that we can ensure that all of your materials are in within that deadline. So the sooner the better. If you feel solid about it, then I would definitely say it earlier. I have a BS in, oh, it looks like somebody answered that. I have a BS in electrical engineering, but I'm interested in applying to the bioengineering concentration for MEng. Which essay would be better to talk about my motivations to switch? I would definitely say statement of purpose is going to be the one that you would talk about your switch, right? Or, well, I guess, or history. You could outline that you gained your experience in this degree. I think it really just depends on how you wanna do it. Janine, how would you advise somebody on this?
Yeah, same. I think you can allude to it in your personal history statement because what I always think of the personal history statement is kind of the context, right? Kind of the supplement, the complement of your statement of purpose. Your statement of purpose is down to business. You hit the ground running. This is what I want to do. I want to stand on stage and talk about, I don't know, some new microchip that I created or something like that. That's your statement of purpose. And you can say, yes, I switched from bioengineering to mechanical or whatever it may be. But then in your personal history statement, you can say, hey, I took, I was really, moved by this class or this project, and that kind of, made me switch gears. So that's the context that it's couched in. And then your statement of purpose is like, hit the ground running. This is my plan. And although plans change, but this is your plan at that time when you're writing this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hope that was helpful for you, Gina.
Yeah. And thank you, Sanjana, for also kind of giving your experience as one of our current ambassadors who just went through this in the last year.
Awesome. Juliet, I see your hand raised.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. What's your question?
Oh, okay. Kind of asking, is it advisable to reference to professors in your statement of purpose? And secondly, is it actually also advisable? Sorry about that. Is it also advisable to have two professors, one from engineering, maybe elect, and um the other from what was it called? Just having two professors in different departments merged together. Is it possible?
You're asking about the letters of recommendation in the second question, asking about the two. Do I understand you correctly?
Okay, if I'm to say, I'm asking, is it advisable to have reference to professors in your proposal, in your statement of purpose?
Um, I don't know how to answer that. Janine, can you support with that?
Yeah. Like, Juliet, do you mean, oh, I want to take Professor so and so's class, or I read about Professor Smith's research or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's even better because it shows that you are doing your homework and you are aware of the research that's being done and you're engaging in the subject. So I think that that would be a perfect kind of addition to include. And you don't have to, but if it moves you and you are truly engaged and interested in that research, then of course, yes. And I think it's people always like to know, oh, the general public is reading this article or study or saw my presentation.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And then I didn't catch the first part of the first question. What was the first question, Juliet?
I think she has answered it.
Okay,
Oh,
perfect.
yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Awesome. It looks like we've got all the questions in the chat. Do we have any other questions? Y'all are welcome to hop on and raise your hand, ask anything you'd like. But if not, thank you so much for joining us today. Y'all were awesome. Small but mighty crew. And then if you need anything, like we said, just let us know. You can email any questions if you don't feel comfortable asking them right here, right now. You're welcome to shoot them over to the Fung Institute at berkeley.edu. And then either myself, Janine, Nabiha, all of us are kind of like overseeing some of that. So we're happy to answer your questions. If you'd like to give us a follow on social media, you're welcome to. Um, and we encourage folks to just go ahead and get those applications started, start drafting up your materials. January is going to be here before you know it. Like we're already here in mid-November. The weeks are just flying by. So if you're planning on submitting this cycle, I would definitely say like start getting your things drafted up now so that we can reach out, like so you can reach out to your recommenders and get all of those things in with plenty of time.
Yes. And we have 3 more sessions coming up in December. So if you missed, there's our set of 3 info sessions are the general info session, the application info session, and then this writing workshop session. And so if you missed any of the other 2, we have them on YouTube. Not quite yet. We're getting them captioned, but they should be posted within the next week or so. And then we have another set of the same general application and writing workshop info sessions on December 8, 9, 10. And so I put that in the chat. And in the meantime, you like Mars said, you can email us. You can also just sorry, I'm admitting one person. You can also look at our website and I linked the department. So whatever department you're interested in, go ahead, go into funginstitute.berkeley.edu, look at the departments, click on it, go into their, curriculum, sample listings, look at who to contact, because we manage kind of the overall process, but the technical courses are advised on by the specific departments. And then one quick kind of plug is this is a professional program, so it's different than like the MS, MA program. And if you have any questions about that, you can email us too. But professional programs are a bit different and they're for a different kind of outcome. So they're directly applicable skills. So then you can go into the industry, whereas an MA, MS is usually more research based and usually on the way to a PhD. So just want to make sure that you all know what the difference is so that it's also important that you pick the right program for you and what your goals are in the future. So it gets really kind of chaotic with the masters of this, master of analytics, master of engineering, master of blah, 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 blah. So if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to us and then we can help differentiate and guide you to the right places so that, this is a year plus of your life and we want to make sure you make the right decision.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Janine. We'll stay on for a couple more minutes. If y'all don't have any questions, you're welcome to log off. But this concludes the session, and so we'll hang around if anybody else has anything